honorable ministers, yesterday, during his speech to the nation, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari said, and I quote, "The public health response to COVID-19 is dependent on our ability to detect, test, and admit cases, as well as to trace all their contacts." Never in the history of our nation has its entire future depended on actions of its public health workforce. While Mr. President acknowledged the progress that had been made, he also emphasized the need for us to do more. We have taken this challenge on at the national and state levels. When the COVID-19 outbreak broke out a few months ago in China, we immediately started building up our laboratory capacity. In under 4 months, we have now activated a total of 12 labs across the country to bring testing closer to the people and to make sure that we have at least one lab in every zone, and we'll keep pushing until we get one in every state. We have achieved this largely by leveraging an existing molecular laboratory capacity within our network and within some centers across the country. We now have a capacity to test 1,500 people per day across the network. This capacity is not being fully utilized at the moment. So the challenge right now is not the laboratory testing capacity, is how active our workforce is, our public health workforce is, in collecting samples, in identifying suspect cases, collecting the samples, sending them into the lab for testing. We have sufficient capacity to test 1,500 right now, and we're not close to exhausting that capacity every day. But from today, we have to push even harder. Our target, following Mr. President's speech, is to get to 2,000 samples a day in Lagos, 1,000 in Abuja, and 1,000 for the rest of the country. This is our target that we have agreed and we will push on. If we don't create more light into what we're doing, we won't really understand where we are. The challenge is no longer with the labs, at least not now. The challenge is in collecting samples from those we identify as suspect cases. Our suspect case definition, we have 3 categories. Symptoms, so fever plus respiratory symptoms in returning travelers. Now that is almost negligible. The only group of people returning now are coming in through the land borders. The next category is fever and respiratory symptoms in contacts of cases. And the third is fever and respiratory symptoms with unknown origin. It's really in these 2 last categories that we're going to focus aggressively in the next 2 weeks, so that we can at least offer our leadership some more information with which to take the decisions that they have to take. So our priority is to increase not only the access to labs, which we have done by increasing the number of labs, but increase the scale of testing in the cities where we have the most cases. So a lot of those efforts will be in Lagos and Abuja, where we have to increase the scale, because that's where most of our suspect cases are. Over the last few weeks, we have distributed sample collection kits across the country, what we call nasopharyngeal swabs and virus transport media, and we're developing innovative tools to track all of that. This Easter, I was in Lagos over the weekend to work with the people and governor of Lagos State and the public health workforce there. We spent the 48 hours I was there to re-strategize in all aspects of the chain, from the call center to identifying patients to making sure we can deploy teams to collect those samples, testing them rapidly, sharing them among the labs that we have, getting the results quickly, both to the patients and to the public health workforce, and making sure the ambulances are available to pick them up. The challenge we have now is a process engineering challenge. How do we make the entire food chain work better? It's no longer about capacity. There are enough vehicles. Both the federal government and the state government has done everything possible to release the resources required for the response. Our challenge now is how to connect the dots, how to make the response more efficient. In addition to the work in Lagos, we have to replicate the same thing across the entire country. So I'll use my last words here to really appeal to the state governments, their commissioners of health, their public health departments, to really focus on these processes, how to get teams out into the field, identify patients that may be cases, collect samples, send those samples through the mechanisms that we've set up. Let us increase testing. It is only by increasing testing that we can provide light. We have worked and we will continue to work to scale even further our laboratory capacity. But right now, the limiting factor is not the lab. The limiting factor is getting the right samples into the lab. And that is our collective responsibility in the next 2 weeks as we build to make the 2 weeks provided to us by Mr. President last night worth it, and in order to then be in a better position to progress further out of this lockdown in the next 2 weeks. Thank you.